What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode on our podcast, Waffles at SSHL. This is our third episode. My name is Isak and I'm your host. With us today, we have Hamzah and Robert, as usual. Today, we're gonna
Hello.
talk about
Hello.
COVID-19 and its impacts on wars. How has COVID-19 impacted war situations? Last episode, we talked about COVID-19 and how that impacted the environment. Today, we're gonna talk about how COVID-19 has impacted the wars. So, let's begin with how does the world look like today? With wars, we have a tense relationship between Ukraine and Russia, right?
There's a
Yeah.
lot of many kind of not we wouldn't say wars, but like battles, conflicts across the world in smaller areas. So example,
Tense
um,
relationships.
Libya, Yemen, like Syria,
Yeah.
Afghanistan, all these
Mm-hmm.
smaller places that aren't really like talked about much, but all of them have, without you thinking about it, the effect of COVID on them is like way more than you would expect it to be, thinking
Yeah.
that
Espe- like
it,
especially for like the civilians in, for example, like Yemen, they're already suffering enough from the wars and the
yeah,
poverty, and then like even more stress coming from COVID-19. It's just like awful. And I
Mm.
think they tried to uh they've been trying to cause like try to have ceasefire around the world because of the virus, but it's not really working out in countries like Yemen or Libya. So it's quite an
Mm.
issue, making it much worse.
um, so statistics on Brink News say that they interviewed a chief commander named Goan, and he is the chief commander of the Afghanistan. Like, I don't know what the like the Taliban in Afghanistan, and they're fighting. They have a conflict against Yemen, and
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they did a survey where statistics showed that um, COVID really has an impact on conflicts and are limiting how much they can do. And there was solid evidence that COVID was spreading a lot in Yemen and Afghanistan, um, through battlefield.
yeah.
But since Corona started, we have seen more conflict and wars. Why do you guys think that's so? I have a good reason for this, but I want to hear your guys' opinion or
Well,
thoughts.
there could be a lot of wars. Like some people could have a different view on a war. For example, someone could say, if you remember at the start of COVID, when everyone was like, when the media was like, "Oh, you need to stock up on things," and people would be fighting in the supermarkets for like
Yeah,
toilet
Mm-hmm.
paper, that could be counted as a war based because of COVID, because all
Mm.
these minor things are technically counted as conflicts due to COVID.
I
But
mean,
you could say that fighting over,
I
I don't
mean,
know, to be honest.
yeah. Some of them also fight like over the lack of attention, like from the governments and stuff. But it's mostly like civil wars. I think
but
maybe like some people are uprising because they just don't. Maybe they're like protesting
there
the
is a
way the
reason.
country's.
There is a really good explanation of
Okay.
why wars and conflicts and things like that has drastically increased now in Corona times.
All right.
Do you want to know why?
Yeah.
Why?
Hit us.
It's because it gets less attention by the media, since the media is so focused on like coronavirus itself. Countries can now have like wars and stuff and get less attention because the most important things for countries is to have a good reputation, and it's not a nice reputation to have when you're in wars and so on. So that's now they're using this time when media is more focused on COVID-19 than the actual wars.
It's an
That
interesting thought.
that is valid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you
you're
really
you're
think
saying
they
in a
they
way,
think that far?
But
Like,
but because when we watch the news, basically all we see is about COVID-19, right?
so
But
you're
imagine,
saying in a way, like,
huh?
so you're saying in a way that they're taking advantage of the fact that they won't pay attention towards them, even if
exactly.
they are having a conflict. But like Robert said, do you think they are that, like, not smart, but yeah, smart? Like, do you think they would think that ahead to
Yes,
start a
of course.
conflict when media is focusing on that? Thinking in these really poor, poverty filled countries like Yemen, do you really think they're gonna be checking the news to see that they're really focused on COVID and
I
to
mean,
start a conflict?
those countries not as much, but like China, the US, Russia,
But
like,
think that these are the main conflicts. Like, yeah, the big ones, they would be covered, but they take it professionally. They're not gonna be dropping bombs on each other and shooting each other. They would be having like a governmental war. They wouldn't be having like a physical war on a battlefield. These
Hmm.
small countries are the ones that are actually having physical
I
conflict.
mean, if you look at what the US did to like some Middle Eastern part, didn't they like bomb like lately in the Middle East, the US, and also now the war between Russia and Ukraine. It's like it's very intense
Yeah.
right now, where Russia has uh, tried to get more control of eastern Ukraine.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I read that the UK has begun sending warships to defend Ukraine as well. No one
that's
really. Hmm?
that's interesting because UK is trying to stay out of conflicts a lot. For example,
Yeah.
in Hong Kong, the things that happened there, uh, Hong Kong would like really want help from UK, but since UK doesn't want to be in a unnecessary conflict, therefore they want to like stay in peace and not have to do with China. So that's why they're not helping Hong Kong, since Hong Kong used to be British colonization. So basically, I can tell you more about Hong Kong for those who doesn't know. Um, Hong Kong was assigned to China as a one country, two system formula. And in this contract, it said that Hong Kong would become fully Chinese by the year 2047. However, controlled, uh, China's controlling Hong Kong in a way where China almost has all the powers, and they even changed a security law a few years ago. So now Hong Kong citizens can be charged for something they've done in Hong Kong. For example, in Hong Kong they have freedom of speech, but now China's arresting people in Hong Kong for saying for having like freedom of speech. For example, a guy who sold books in a store about like China's propaganda and scandals, he got arrested.
Hmm.
So yeah, like Hong Kong is designed for the pro China aspect and not the pro, not for the pro Democrats. So it's interesting how UK like actually participates to help Ukraine
Yeah.
taking a step
In
forward.
a way, could you say that the countries with a higher status um have similar conflicts with, like, let's say the key example I gave was Yemen and Afghanistan? Do you think the bigger countries would have the same level of conflict, but they would keep it like not low key, but they would do it in such a way that they keep their good reputation.
Yeah, like that's all countries care about. They want a good reputation and they want a population that trusts the government. They want a population uh, where they can have control over them and a population that trusts the government. And uh, thinking of countries that have succeeded that a lot is China. China has
Yeah.
great control over their population, and
Yeah.
almost all Chinese people trust, from what I've seen, trust the government.
But
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. That comes with a bond. That comes with the people trusting the government and the government trusting the citizens. Um,
hmm
so it's like it's collaboration. To be fair,
It would be a different thing if Ukraine was in NATO, because then the UK would like have that to justify why they're helping them. But
yeah.
Ukraine has never been a member of NATO. I think they've been trying to for the past 15 years.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, but like no countries in Europe actually have to help or defend them because they're not part of NATO. But it's
by
nice to see UK actually stepping in.
Biden bombed Syria um, without approval, like without the Congress, and
Mm.
that was in Corona time. So even the US is using this time because have you guys seen like on the news that Biden bombed Syria? Probably a little bit, but it's not too much. So
Yeah.
those things in these times, circumstances gets like hidden, you know.
Have you seen on Brink News? It was stated that they recorded that in July, COVID-19 cases rose to 50% more than it was previously due to conflicts where 3 million civilians are packed together in like small enclosed conditions due to the fact that outside is huge conflicts between like so bombing, shooting, tanks, all of that stuff. So 3 million civilians are all packed like in, let's say there would be one house and there would be, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 people inside that small house. And due to this, the COVID-19 cases spiked so much. And to think that Biden would still, he still targeted that country in a way, there must be a reason behind that. But then you could also think that some like these small countries, even though they really don't care about their statuses, some of them have no status, but they still do it professionally. So, example, the rebel groups of Colombia and Philippines. It was said that back in spring they stopped when COVID cases when COVID cases really like shot up in those countries at in springtime, they stopped their conflict for a certain amount of time until it lowered it, and now they've taken up arms again, meaning they've started to fight again. So to think that
Uh,
they don't have a really good Colombia and Philippines, not rich countries at all, um,
Mm,
but they don't really care. They went along with the regulation of that. Maybe they didn't want to harm their people.
yeah, but I'm
The fact that yeah,
thinking of world leading countries. Those are the ones who like who the news usually actually talk about because that's what the people finds more interesting. It's messed up how the news only focuses on what the like listeners and the audience is interested to and like to
yeah.
earn more money, but uh, there's so much going down in the Middle East and like Africa even around the globe, but all the news is talking about is like China, the US. and like COVID-19. That's all you hear about in the news nowadays.
Yeah.
So there physical wars. What about economic wars? Economical wars.
Such as what, like the trading war between USA and China?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of slowed down a bit now with Corona, I guess.
Mm.
Uh, at least for USA, because they can't really produce as much. But you know, since China took pretty good control over the situation, they've been probably producing just as much as they were before, or even more. Because you mentioned last podcast that their GDP had even gone up during the Corona
Mm-hmm.
crisis. So maybe that gave China a huge like advantage
Yeah, and
in the trading war.
the
You
U.S. is
could also
still.
think that a lot of borders were closed due to COVID, and America or USA is one of the most like exposed to those, them needing those borders to transfer all their goods, whereas China do it to the whole world anyway. So maybe some countries didn't close their borders to China, knowing that they need and they rely on their supplies to
Yeah.
continue with their to run their country.
Hmm.
That's a great point. Could there be any other reasons, do you guys think, that wars, conflicts have gone up?
Have they
Uh,
gone up?
yeah,
Hmm. Where have they gone up then?
See,
I know
everywhere.
there's
Libya, it's
a
exceeded
lot
by
of
a bit.
different, yeah, there's a lot of like different levels to how if it's either gone up or gone down. I think economically, economic wars, I don't think they spiked a lot. I think they went down. And with like physical wars, thinking about like conflicts and civil wars, in some aspects they might have gone up, where people took, like you said, people took advantage of maybe the media really not caring about that. But then in other aspects, there are some countries that did have respect for, let's say, their own people and their own countries. And when
Mm.
they understood that COVID, like Corona, the virus itself, naturally spreads. Um, that's like the nature of the virus to go through
Mm.
with mass amounts of people. So maybe they took that to account when thinking if we're on a battlefield, there's going to be dead bodies everywhere, and the the virus would still spread through there. It would the rates would increase massively. So they could have taken that to account, and that's where it levels out between the countries that didn't stop and the countries that did stop.
A few years from now, I wonder how this world would look like. Will China have a higher GDP than the US? And
I think,
also, um, will Russia uh, become the Soviet again? That's not impossible. That
no, it is possible. It's hard to
exactly.
know. I mean, I think, hmm, it's hard to know who's gonna win between America and China in the trade war. Like, China does produce a lot, but I think because America, they have started banning some Chinese products, I think,
Mm-hmm.
to be to be I think shipped to the USA. I don't
Yeah.
know really, but I think USA they're starting to take action and try to come out on top of this trade war. But then China produces it such a high amount and to everywhere in the world for a cheap price.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a pretty big deal because I think in the future the money is like the money around the world is gonna be even more and more in just some countries. It's not gonna be very evenly distributed. I think,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, I think some countries are gonna hold a like large portion of the wealth around the whole world. It's gonna, I don't know if the world is gonna be able to balance itself out if few countries can hold almost all the power. What will the future look like then?
It's crazy to think about how the world would look like when we become adults, grow up, look completely different. Who knows?
Yeah, kind of.
Yes.
It's like it's really weird to think that we might never see the world normal. Not normal, but what we used to think was normal.
Mm.
We might never see that again. Thinking that COVID might like be there forever. It just might never go.
And something else that's quite dangerous is that our generation is not as interested in politics as people in today. So when we grow up, there's a chance of like politics going like democracy. So since not many people in our age are interested in it, there's a chance of it not being a thing, and more we're seeing more like dictatorship around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's really tough to think about.
Do you guys have something else to mention?
I think
About
we covered it pretty well.
there
Yeah,
isn't, it's not very deep, I think, at the moment.
wasn't
The thing
that?
with wars, the thing with wars during COVID is just that the outcomes are so vast. With the fact that think about there's so many countries in the world and everyone has a different view, a different opinion, a different
Mhm.
perspective on how the world, like say, runs. So thinking that the the outcomes of let's say a country who really cares about their people but also really wants to fight, and in a country that really doesn't care about the people and doesn't care if they fight or not, they if them two have a conflict, the the outcome is so like you can't predict it because you don't know how the two are gonna balance out to find themselves on equal ground. Do you understand? So one country might either back out, if that's even possible, because just to protect their people, or they might continue fighting, but that goes against their own will because they don't want to fight because they know outcome of let's say how many COVID cases they're gonna get
Mhm.
afterwards.
Yeah. It's, it's this is interesting to analyze mm, an outcome of something that has nothing to do about it. Like COVID-19 has nothing to do about wars, but the outcome on wars is heavily impacted.
Yeah, like how the wars are, don't know, like just how it's going right now because it's even tougher for some countries with not only a war but also a whole pandemic to even make it
Mm-hmm.
worse.
Yeah,
And yeah,
countries are financially in trouble.
yeah, and I don't think the media really shines a light on it because like it's not very focused on right now how tough it is in some countries.
Yeah,
No one really mentions like
still,
how.
Sweden is actually in a pretty good position. They only have like governmental debts of 55% of their GDP, whilst the countries like the US has a much higher debt. I think it's up to, what does US have, like 77%. So Sweden, yeah. What were you gonna say, Hamza?
I was just gonna elaborate on what you said, but then you finished it.
Okay. Do you guys want to say something else?
Oh, I
I
think
don't
we
think I
should
have
wrap it
anything
up.
to add on. Yeah, it's a shorter episode, but it's not really a topic you can say much about.
Mm,
Hopefully,
yeah,
the next episode will be a bit longer,
for
since
sure.
As it would be based on our own topic.
Yeah,
yeah,
so that will be
All right,
longer.
interesting one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And thank you for everyone who
made it this
listened. Yeah.
far. Yeah,
yeah.
It was fun to do this one. All the links are in the description and our mail if you want to contact us. Thank you for this one. See you in the next one. Bye.
See you.
bye
Bye.
bye, bye bye.